So welcome to Marketing 101. This is going to be a four-part marketing series. We're starting this with talking about farming. So that's the 101. 102 is going to be on August the 28th at 10 a.m. That's going to be going over online marketing. Next month, the dates are still yet to be scheduled and determined. We're going to be talking about sphere of influence marketing. And then finally, Marketing 104 is going to be marketing your listings. So I just want to start with like a generic thought process here. So why do we advertise, right? I want to make sure everyone has a very clear understanding of why you're farming before you start jumping into it. Because a lot of agents have a really bad habit of just throwing out some postcards this postal walk or going on to the scorecard of a golf tournament, and they don't really think about why they're doing it and what the kind of strategy behind it is. So for farming marketing, you are really trying to get mind share for the real estate industry. I put up a couple very well-known brands up here, Nike and McDonald's. I know Dave Greenspan, who came and talked during our spring kickoff, he said it perfectly. He's like, if you think of shoes, what company first comes to mind? It's probably Nike, right? Maybe Reebok, who knows? But then fast food, it's probably McDonald's, right? If I said soft drinks, what are you probably thinking of? You're probably thinking Coke, right? That's because they've done a really good job of brand advertising. Okay. They have just inundated you with ads. They've spent a ton of money on it so that anytime you think about these products, you're thinking about them. It gives them instant recognition and a little bit of clout. You assume that they're going to be high quality, maybe not with McDonald's, but you assume they're high quality or they're a good product, right? So you want to essentially have that in real estate. Now, it's going to be impossible to be like, across Ontario. If someone thinks about real estate, they're going to think about you, right? So, but you want to make sure whoever your audience is, that they associate you with real estate. If they start thinking about real estate, they start thinking about you specifically, right? That should be your goal. That's brand recognition. So we do it for the brand recognition side of it. And what does that get us? It gets us more business. It drives business. It gets people to call us. It gets them to seek us out. You'll start getting calls instead of having to do door knocking, cold calling to try and get those leads. They'll start coming to you, right? This also has the distinct advantage of creating advantage for you. If they call you, they're seeking you out, calling you for a listing appointment. They already know or presume that you're a top agent in town, that you do a good job because they see you everywhere, right? So this can't be understated. Like you're already kind of like famous, right? Like, mini famous. And that is a huge advantage in the situation. They probably feel like they already know you. Maybe they follow you on social too, right? So what is the audience that we're chasing here? You're not chasing everybody because 85% of real estate transactions are repeat and referral, and 15% of real estate transactions are up for grabs. They're free agents. So you're chasing that 15%. I have no idea where the stat came from, but I hear it all the time. So I don't have a source for it, but this is a pretty well-established industry standard across Ontario that 85% of real estate transactions are that repeat and referral, and the rest are the ones that call off signs, they call agents that they've seen in marketing, that kind of thing. So just it's an important number to know because we're going to be looking at that going forward with some of your investment analysis. So some things I do want to say too, farming, particularly brand advertising, it's not instant gratification. It takes a lot of time. Usually people say like, the first year, you may not see much return on your investment here. It takes time to build up a brand. McDonald's, Nike, they didn't do it in a day, right? It took years. It takes a lot of money too. It's not cheap. And it takes a lot of patience too. And that's like the instant gratification thing. Don't just assume that, you spend, thousands of dollars on billboards and bench ads for a few months, that you're going to get those calls right away. It takes time to build up that brand recognition. And it takes that patience to see a marketing plan or strategy through. We always say give it at least a year before you can start expecting to see any sort of returns. And I see a lot agents, especially in town here in Kingston, a lot of agents make mistakes when they're farming. They just throw them up against the wall, hope it sticks, and usually it doesn't. They just, there's a bench ad available in this corner, I'm going to take that, right? There's no strategy to what they're doing. They just they burn money on plans. I also was talking to an agent who did, like I used the example earlier, they put their advertising on a golf scorecard for a golf tournament they weren't at. wasn't even in their area. Someone called them and asked, and they said, "Yeah, sure, no problem. I'll spend $500 on that." That was probably just burning money in that case. I mean, there's little advantages to those things, but you could have a much more um, advantageous use or efficient use of your ad spend if you're thinking it through to begin. And you may notice I do have an affinity for monkeys, so there's probably going to be a lot of monkey pictures throughout this slideshow. So where do you start? If you want to start farming, you really need to think it through. And all the time, we've got several agents have just joined us recently who have been like, yeah, like I want to get into farming, but I have no idea, like, where do I go, right? Where do I start? The idea, I want to do it, but I just don't know how to get going. So there's 3 areas to start thinking about, and they kind of have a bit of a feedback loop on each other. So you want to try and figure out what area you want to farm in. You have to create a plan or a strategy, and then you have to do a return on investment analysis to make sure that the numbers just work. So those are the 3 considerations. I'm going to go over each individually. You can start from any spot, but I like to start with the area. Sometimes the area, I say choose an area, sometimes it chooses you. Maybe you have a couple listings in the area, in a specific area, and that's a great start to farming something, right? We'll talk about working listings in part of your farming strategy shortly, but think about what area you want to do. There's a few considerations you want to think about, what the demographics are, right? Renters versus owners. It's a good thing. If it's an area where it's all student rentals, maybe you don't want to farm that area because none of the owners are going to see your marketing anyway. So it's kind of pointless, unless maybe you're going for first-time home buyers, right? Maybe that is your target demographic. You're trying to get people who are renters into their first home. Young versus old, right? Maybe you've got more of like a downsizing side of things you want to get into. So you want to try and find that older demographic that owns their own homes. Or maybe you want that like suburbia with a young professional, like just young families, right? It just kind of depends what you're looking for. But you can definitely check out the demographics. You can check out a lot of these things in Geo and other places. Then income levels too, right? Like if you want to make sure you're in an area that has the capacity to buy and sell in whatever area they're in. Next thing you want to do when you're choosing an area, you want to do a turnaround analysis. I'm not going to go into too much of the details on this, but the easiest way to do that is you go into whatever your MLS system is, Matrix, Realm, whatever you're using, box off the area that you're thinking about doing, and just see how many homes have sold there in the past couple of years. Write down also what agents, like just, export that list, put it in a spreadsheet or whatever. Maybe there's like 100 homes that sold in the area that you're trying to farm or you're planning on farming. And then sort it by agent too. See how many agents come up more than once, right? Maybe there's an agent that did like 10 deals in that neighborhood. That's your competition, right? Everyone's going to always have like agents with random deals here and there, but you want to see if there's one or two that pop up regularly, because that's the hurdle you're going to have to overcome. If there's already someone doing half the deals in a neighborhood, that's a really big hurdle, right? Nothing's overcomable, but you just have to identify that that's going to be a harder egg to crack than if you have an area where there is no identifiable agent as being like the dominant one in that area. So going to the plan. First thing you got to think about, what are you trying to accomplish? And this just goes back to a bit of the strategy side of things. You want to make sure, like, if you let's say you're in Thornhill, Kingston, Newark, it doesn't matter where you are. One big mistake a lot of agents make is they just put advertising all over town, right? That shouldn't be your goal. You should start with a small pocket. You want to be 5-mile famous is what we call it. So you have a neighborhood or a small area and you want to be the primary realtor in that area. Don't try and like chew off all of Thornhill, right? It's just way too big. Choose a specific neighborhood or area. Again, going back to the last slide where you did that area analysis already, and focus on that. Make sure that all of your marketing efforts are focused on that area. Okay. Everyone in that area should associate you with real estate. That's the whole brand advertising thing, right? When they think about real estate, you want to make sure they're thinking about your name, right? And I'm sure that everyone on this call probably knows agents who farm areas really well. And you'd be like, hey, if there's a specific area, you'd be like, hey, there's this one agent who just has all the branding there. Like, that's the agent for that area. You want to be that agent, right? So you want to make sure that your advertising is saturating that specific neighborhood. Okay. That's the really important part. when it all boils down to it, you want to make sure you've got more advertising in an area than any other agent. So it's all about concentrated marketing. A lot of people for brand advertising, they have to see you over and over and over again. I've heard a number before, but something like, thousands of times they have to see your face before it actually sinks in. So you want to make sure you've got those ads in that small area, bench ads, flyer drops, whatever, being concentrated in that one specific area. It's much, much better than spending the same amount of money in a larger area. Okay, so in terms of farming strategy, this is going along with the plan, right? Like we know what we want to do. We want to become 5 Mile famous. Like, how do you do it? And there's no set solution to it. The best thing to do is to try and figure out the elements that can help out here. There's 3 different pronged areas you can look at when you're doing this. And you should hit all 3 of these sections. The first is consistent advertising. Couldn't think of a better name for that, but that's just the advertising that you're doing on a regular basis. That's just always there, the sticky advertising, right? Like bench ads, billboards, flyer drops, right? Like you want to make sure that you've got flyers being dropped to all the houses in whatever area you're farming once a month, right? That kind of consistent advertising, the things that you just said it and you forget it. That's what I'm going to call the consistent advertising. You also, though, like that's not enough. And a lot of agents just kind of do that and they stop there. You want to make sure that you complement the consistent advertising with 2 other things: working your listings that come up in that area, as well as community presence. You want to make sure you're present in the area too. Don't just be that person on the postcard, be that person that people are seeing out in the community, right? So let's talk about community presence for a second. So I've got 2 bullet points there: events, door knocking, cold calling. The whole idea is you just want to be present in whatever the community is. Community events, we'll get into a little bit more detail in a future slide, but that's just, being involved in Potato Fest, Carrot Fest, whatever festivals are there, you want to make sure you're there. Maybe you're doing community barbecues, you're doing Easter egg hunts like in the community, like whatever it is, you want to make sure you're there so people see you. Pam Prescott had our founder. I know most of you are familiar with her. She has a story that she tells all the time where she was out at a community event and a little girl came up to her and asked for her autograph. And she thought it was like the cutest thing ever. She signed it and everything because she saw that girl saw her on all the different ads and everything in the area that she was farming. So she was that 5 Mile famous. She was famous to that girl, right? And that just shows how well it can work if you can get to that level where you can, make an impression on hopefully the girl's parents as well, where when they think about real estate, they think about her too. But that's the whole community presence side of thing. You want to make sure that when you're there, people are approaching you and they're talking to you about real estate. The final thing too, and I'll talk a bit more in detail about this shortly, but working your listings. If you get a listing in your farming area, that's liquid gold. You want to work those hard. Just listed, just sold, postcards, no codes, door knocking, cold calling. We'll talk about all this on a future slide because I've got a bit of a story to tell about that. So consistent advertising. Again, this is a must, right? Like whatever your area is, you want to be sending out monthly flyers. We do have the Spotlight marketing program, but you can use any flyer service that you want. It doesn't matter. We provide Spotlight for you as an easy, set it and forget it service that's really easy to use. That is 35 to 45 cents per home, depending on your volume. It's sent out to a postal walk, which would be your farming area. And it's done once a month. It's got marketing stats on one side, your branding on the other, right? It goes out like clockwork once a month. And for this consistent advertising, the monthly flyer stuff, I know everyone's like, well, no one actually looks at it. They just pick it up, they throw it in the recycling bin. And yeah, like most of them will, but people will still see it. They'll check to see what it is before they throw it in the bin. And that's the whole point. You're trying to get in front of the people. And there are people that will use it for what's Susan's marketing stats for the month, right? They'll pick it up, they'll check it out, and they'll actually take a look at it. But even if they don't, even if most of them go in the junk, that's okay. Like it's accomplishing the goal that you're looking to accomplish, which is getting in front of people. The other things, and I want to just put some like rough prices up here. Bench ads. I've got a picture up here of my favorite realtor, Phil Dunphy. He's from what's the name of that show? Modern Family. I used to love that show. It's a shame that it came off the air, but he was like my favorite realtor online. He's like always on TV shows. They always show realtors in a bad light, but he was definitely one that I could relate to. I feel like he'd be a good fit at our brokerage. So bench ads, they cost roughly $150 a month. Again, it depends on how many bench ads you have. If you have one like that on a bus stop, Creative Outdoor Solutions is our representative that we typically contact for those. And then billboards, they can vary a lot, right? It really depends. Are you paying a farmer like on a side deal to keep your billboard up on his property, or are you on the primary street in town and from the 401, right? Like it's going to cost a lot more for those high traffic areas as opposed to like making that not backhanded, that side deal, handshake deal with the farmer. So it can really vary. Like I put $250 to $5,000 a month. I'm sure it can go even more expensive than that too, depending where it is. But the things that you want to think about with bench ads and billboards is placement. I get text messages from agents all the time. Oh, there's this one bench ad that just came up at like Gardeners and Taylor Kidd, right? Like, should I jump on it? Should I jump on it? Like, they don't come available too often. Like, well, like, how does that fit into your strategy, right? Like, you got to think about it. Don't just jump on the opportunity because it presents itself. Maybe it is a good opportunity, but you just need to think it through. You want to make sure that wherever you place your billboard bench ads, they're getting repetitive viewing. And I'm going to show you a little bit of a map here. So this is just outside of Kingston, but this is relevant to whatever area you're looking to farm. So just on this map here, we've got Kingston on the bottom right. And I was working with one agent who wants to farm a few outlying communities, right? These are rural communities, but it doesn't matter. Like if you're in the suburbs, the same kind of arguments you apply here. So what we were looking at is, okay, where do these people typically commute, right? These are feeder communities for Kingston. Like for most people who live in those communities, a lot of them would work in Kingston. So they'd all funnel through this one road, Highway 38, to come into town, right? So since we're farming those three areas, the kind of primary spots to hit with billboard ads would be where they're all funneling into, right? This kind of like choke point, if you will. So that agent strategy, he's going to be putting up 3 billboard ads within fairly quick succession, within like a kilometer of each other on farmers' properties to try and hit that repetitive, like, oh, there's that person, and there's that person again, right? That's much more effective than having one on the northwest side of town, one downtown, one on the east end, right? Like having that repetitiveness nature, it's going to help so much with all those people coming down that road. They're going to presume that realtor is probably the number one realtor in the area because they keep seeing their billboards every day, 3 times on the way into work, 3 times on the way back. Trust me, that kind of repetitiveness works with brand advertising. So that's just the kind of thing you want to think about, like trying to figure out what area you're farming and where everyone goes, right? Like the bench ads is a good example of that too. Like I live in the west end of Kingston. I have to travel to, more or less downtown, and I go along this one road called Taylor Kidd, and I see this one agent who's not with our brokerage, and she's got 3 bench ads along the way, and I see her all the time. It drives me nuts, but I keep seeing it, right? And the repetitiveness of seeing her 3 times along the way to my commute to work every day, that helps with her brand advertising recognition. And she does a lot of business in town. She's got a very good branding strategy. Okay, so the consistent advertising, again, that's great. Most agents just do that. There's other things you should be doing too. And this is something that Pam has an amazing seminar. You can check it on Excel or YouTube. Just look up, well, if you go on our YouTube channel, for our YouTube training channel, if you sort the videos by newest to oldest, it was literally the first video we posted. So you can sort it by oldest videos. And she did a video on open houses. If you haven't seen that or been to one of her open house seminars, you have to see it. She like literally like wrote the book on how to do open houses properly and working your listings. That was her primary pipeline when she was an active agent, top seller in Thornhill. So what you want to do, and maybe I'll start with a bit of an anecdote, because we just had a listing here at our office, and we took a lot of our newer agents to help the listing agent work this listing. So we had a listing coming up. It was on a street called Dundas. Okay. We had 4 agents go out into that neighborhood, and they door knocked the whole neighborhood saying, we've got a listing coming up in a few days. Like, right, you gotta be careful because the coming soon stuff, right? We've got a listing coming up in a few days on Dundas Street. It's one of your neighbors. And they invited them out to an exclusive open house, right? This great opportunity to choose your neighbors, come on out, check it out. If you know of anybody who wants to move to the neighborhood, this is a great time to let them know before everybody else finds out. And it's a really successful door knocking opener, right? We also created this little note. You can kind of see one on the right here. This isn't the note that we use, but it was a similar format. being like, welcome, like invitation to exclusive open house. And we had a bit of a note, hello neighbor, we're about to sell a house around the corner. Had a picture of the house, gave a little bit of information about the house and like the family or whatever. And after doing this, the first two open houses that we had like 40 plus groups come through. It ended up being really successful. And a lot of them, like, because we talked to them all, right, came because they got the handout. We talked to them in the door knocking. And it's amazing too how many of them like kind of kept in touch with, like, oh yeah, like they started keeping in touch to see how things were going, right? So then the other thing is we sold this house in a few days. It was in competition. Amazing. Perfect. Ideal situation, right? You sell it really quickly. A lot of people through the open houses. Then we went out and we took the same agents and we door knocked the neighborhood like literally yesterday. We went out, we had this specific letter here on the right. It says families looking for a home. Your neighborhood is in high demand. We have several families looking for homes in your area. We had some potential clients come out of the open houses. So now we had all that activity. We could say we have that narrative. There's a lot of demand in your area, but we need to find people who are willing to sell. We've got some buyers in our back pocket, right? And Sylvia McNeil was up here yesterday, our Hamilton manager, and we were chatting about it. And I put this letter together, and she's like, change all of the words buyers to families and buyer to person. And I made that change because she was like, you know what? It makes it a little bit easier for people to connect to that and to see that you're working with like real people, right? Buyers is more, like conservative generic, whereas families is a little bit more warmer, right? So that was a pretty successful door knocking session too. And a lot of the conversations that came out of that, like, oh yeah, like I met you at the open house or whatever. I saw that went for sale pretty quickly. Like saw, you guys did a good job on that, whatever. It gives you that opportunity to have that additional exposure in the neighborhood that you're farming. So I guarantee that our agents picked up a ton of business just by working this one listing. And if you have a listing and especially in your farm area, you want to work it really hard. And I know, like, if you're a busy agent, there's other agents out there who can help you out with this, right? I'm sure there's a ton of agents at every office that are willing to do the door knocking, willing to do open houses and like work that listing, and they're giving you exposure too, right? So this is a really important point. Don't just have your listing sit there and not work it hard, especially if it's in your farm area. So that's kind of the end to end that we did on this one, and we'll still be following up. We'll be sending note cards and everything out to those houses we door knocked on. We've got all everyone's contact information we talked to. We're going to be cold calling the area as well. So it's a really good end to end farming strategy to work your listings. Finally, the last thing I want to talk about with this kind of three-pronged approach is events. You want to be present in the neighborhood. I gave that anecdote before about Pam with the little girl coming up and wanting her signature because she was 5 Mile famous in that area to that girl. She thought she was a movie star, right? You want to have that effect on people. You want to be in front of people and having conversations. At the end of the day, it's just a relationship industry. It's about having conversations with people. So if you're farming an area hard, you want to make sure that you're in front of people in that area. Some ideas, and the sky's the limit here, right? I'm just using some ideas from things our agents are doing. Neighborhood barbecue, right? If it's a neighborhood, maybe suburbia, maybe you live there, right? Throw a barbecue for the neighborhood. Go door knock, invite people out to the barbecue. If you have an event that you're running, by the way, like, you can run the best event in town. If people don't know about it or you don't promote it properly, no one will show up. So one of the best things for any sort of event to do is to invite people personally, right? If you have an event that you're running in a neighborhood, go door knock the neighborhood. Just invite people out to the event, right? That'll be your opening line. You'll be like, I'm just having an event in the neighborhood for barbecue, so all the neighborhoods can meet each other, whatever your script is, your line there, and invite them out personally. I guarantee that you're going to have a much higher amount of people coming to your event if you do invite them in person. We had our grand opening in Kingston recently, just to use this as an example, because it's a perfect example. I had a list of all the agents in Kingston, and I started calling them. I called maybe about 100, and of those 100, about 50 showed up, right? So I had about 50% success rate with people I called and talked to directly. The rest of them, I just sent out an email blast. So I just didn't have time to call 600 people. Of the rest of the people I was email blasted to, I think there's like maybe 3 or 4 people that I emailed, of the 600 that showed up. So like right there, like your conversion rate is so much higher, and it gives you an excuse to get in front of people to door knock, right? To like have something to give them when you knock on the door. So those personal interactions, those personal invites make a huge difference for making a successful event. Again, some other ideas too. Ice cream truck. I think Pam Prescott uses this analogy a lot, or this story. She used to rent an ice cream truck in town, just give out free ice cream. Like talk about like making it a win for the kids and the parents in the town, right? An Easter egg hunt. We've got an Easter egg hunt around the corner for myself, right? And that's like a perfect opportunity if you're an agent to like organize something like an Easter hunt or Easter egg hunt, or maybe just go and like, help run it and sponsor it, whatever it happens to be. Local festivals, almost every town or area has some sort of local festivals: corn roast, apple fest, carrot fest. I feel like every fruit or vegetable has a fest of some sort somewhere in Ontario, right? So if you have anything like that in your area, be present, be there, have a booth, do face painting. It doesn't matter, whatever it is, like get in front of people and just be there. We've got an agent too who's actually putting on an event at a local bar. He's going out door knocking and inviting people out to this event in the area. And he's one thing he's saying, and I'm a little bit curious as if this is okay, but he's just said, yeah, you know what? The first beer's on me. He's picking up the first beer for everybody, right? So he'll come in, everyone will love him too, because who doesn't like it? Whoever's complimenting you with the beer. So he'll have a great time on that. I'm sure he'll have a lot of people coming. You say that agents will come to office meetings if you feed them. Well, clients will come out if you feed them a beer, right? So I'm sure he's going to have a really successful event there, and everyone's going to want to like shake his hand, say thanks, and network with him too. So that's another great example of an idea of something you can do. So if you are at an event, whatever it happens to be, you want to make sure you're working the event, right? You're not just sitting there in a corner, like, checking your phone or whatever. If you're manning a booth, like you need to work it. You got to do it properly. You got to be in front of people, introducing yourself, saying hi, making contacts, because that's what this industry is about, right? So that's the event side of things. It's really important to be present. A lot of agents don't focus on that enough. Okay, getting to the next part, I'm going to talk about return on investment. So again, this is when I was talking before, you got the plan, you got the area, and you got to do a return on investment analysis for your marketing strategy. It's important to crunch the numbers just to see where you're at. So again, just to remind everybody, you're chasing that 15% of real estate transactions when you're doing farming. So how much of this 15% do you want to get is a question you're going to have to ask yourself. And how much are you willing to spend? What's your budget, right? So how much of the 15% do you want to get? That's your return. How much are you willing to spend? That's your investment, right? So return on investment is how much more money you're going to make off the money that you're spending. So let's look at the return side of it a bit. Again, got that thing with monkeys. So here we got a monkey picture of them doing taxes. 1,000 homes. Let's just say you conservatively pick a 1,000 home farming area, right? You did your due diligence. You checked to see how many sales there were in the past year. 100 sales in the past year in that area. Let's say 10% turnover rate. 85 of those deals, remember the 85%, that's going to be repeat and referral. That's pretty much off the table to start. You're chasing the 15 deals that are the free agents. Your goal may be, okay, I want to get 5 of those deals, maybe not in the first year, but let's say like the second year, third year, whatever. Don't forget, this snowballs, right? If you get 5 deals in the first year, you're going to start getting the repeat and referrals in the neighborhood. So this is just more of like an early on analysis. And again, you times that by whatever your commission is in your area. I just put 10%, 10,000 to make the numbers easy here. That could be a $50,000 expected return. Don't forget, I'm just using these numbers to show you like the thought process. You have to make sure you plug your own numbers into here and make sure you do your due diligence for whatever neighborhood you're looking at. So the investment side of things, you got to look at all those things in your plan, right? So it's good to put all the items down and you put costs to them. And then you decide, okay, oh, maybe that's a little bit too expensive. I don't want to do that. Maybe I see there's more value in doing this, more value in doing the events. Maybe I'll put a little bit more money into that side of things. But just as an example here, just as a bit of like a thought process, let's say these are the 4 things you want to do: monthly newsletter, 3 bench ads, 1 community event, and 1 billboard, right? So you just break it down. Monthly newsletter, 35 cents per newsletter, 1,000 homes, 1 a month, it's $4,200. 3 bench ads, $150, 3 signs, 12 months, $5,400. Community event, maybe you got a budget of $1,000 for that, really. Community events are hard to budget for. It's kind of sky's the limit, depends on what you want to do. And maybe you got 1 billboard, right? $800 if that's how much the billboard costs. 12 months, $9,600 for the year. That investment, $20,000. So crunching the math there, we've got $20,000 roughly investment, $50,000 return, right? Again, these are just numbers based on this kind of thought experiment. It's a very simplified analysis, but this is the kind of thing you want to do. But you want to break it down even further. Also, don't forget to obviously, if you're putting up, say, a listing, there's expenses that go along with that as well. But this just kind of takes into account the cost and the return purely based on the money you're putting into the marketing budget. So, some final words. Is farming worth it? It's worth it if you plan effectively. It's worth it if you can afford it, and it's worth it if you have the patience. Those are the real big things. Don't just knee-jerk reaction start farming. Think it through. Okay, everyone's got a sales manager or two at your office. Talk to them about it. Call me, talk to me about it. I'm happy to chat with you about it too. Okay, but also make sure you have the money to see it through for at least a year, whatever your plan is. You can dip your toes in with a light marketing budget. You can go head in with like a really crazy marketing budget. It's up to you, but just make sure that you have the financial backing to be able to afford it. Because if you run out of cash before the year ends and you pull it, it's going to be wasted money, right? You got to make sure you got the patience to see it through. So, okay, I kind of lied. Those weren't my final words. I'm going to talk a little bit about effective advertising too, because having the strategy and everything's great, but you want to make sure that your ads that are placed are effective ads, right? Not every billboard advertising is just as effective as anyone else's. So, looking at Nike and McDonald's as examples, these are great examples of very clean brand advertising. I've seen billboards with just the Nike swoosh, right? And they can do that because they're trying to build a brand. They don't have you don't have a phone number for Nike, right? You don't have like a phone number for McDonald's. Like they wouldn't put those on their ads. They have front and center their logos, their marketing pitch is nice and big and clean. And that's really important, especially, and I'm going to go over some examples that I pulled from the internet in a second, but especially for bench ads and billboards, you have to realize people have a fraction of a second. They're driving by, right? It's like literally the blink of an eye. They have to be able to see your stuff and recognize it as you, see the information that you want them to capture within that fraction of a second. So less is more. Simply put, less is more. You want to have a big headshot. So I know some agents out there are nervous about using their headshots or whatever. You need to get over that because headshots, people are programmed biologically to recognize other people's faces, right? Your headshot should be your logo. It's your branding, right? So you want to make sure it's nice and big on whatever advertising you do. And then the other big element that you really need to have is your name that needs to be nice and big. People need to see it. They have to know, okay, that's Doug, right? That's John, whatever. They'll know it within that second, instant recognition. And even if they don't know you, they can see your face and your name and they can process it quickly. Okay. The final thing is you want to make sure it's obvious that you're a realtor. You know, you can have a great big headshot, big name. They don't know if you're a car salesman, if you're in insurance, they have no idea what you do. You have to have something that makes it obvious you're a realtor. Usually it's like a slogan. It could be the Century 21 seal. There's a lot of brand recognition there, right? Or maybe it's whatever your pitch is, like, you know, number one agent in town, or you know, less does more deals, like whatever your like slogan is, right? That might be that kind of ties you to being a realtor. And then the other thing that you want to put in there, and it's less of a primary thing, and a lot of people put these in here thinking this is the most important thing. You can put one or two contact details, website or phone number, right? If you've got a website, if you've got your like linuskilius.com, that's great because it's your name and your website. You can kind of integrate the two together in your branding, but don't worry about like stuffing in your website, socials, QR codes, your phone number, like all that kind of stuff. If they remember your name, they know you're working in the area, they'll be able to find you. Okay. So you just have like some basic things. People aren't going to be driving by in the car, like dialing your number, right? You want to keep it simple. That's the whole point of this. I'm going to show you some bad examples, and there's a ton of them out there. I took a couple snapshots of some bad bench ads in town, and I hope that no one ever watches this recorded video down the road and they end up becoming some of our agents. But you know, I'm sure they'll know that these are bad bench ads after going through this video. So the problem with all of these bench ads is there's just too much going on. Right? You look at any of these, the names are small, they don't stand out. Maybe the contrasting colors is poor. You've got on the top right, as an example, you got 4 agents up there. That's way too scattered. And again, like if you are like a team lead or whatever, it should just be, the team lead's name, whoever. You can have 2 agents up there, that's fine. But like 4 agents, that's just way too much. Like no one's going to be driving past this and like know who's even on that team, right? It isn't a business card, right? Like look at the one on the bottom left: office, cell, email. Like everything's super small there. No one's going to be able to see that or read it when they're driving by. The one on the bottom right, the contrast in colors is horrible. I can barely see what her last name is, right? You want to make sure things can jump off the page. She's got a lot of empty space there too. If I had any advice for the agent in the bottom right corner, I'd say like make your name and or logo there, because the logo is integrated in the name, much bigger, right? Like just try and make sure that it's the primary thing. On that example there, yeah, her headshot's great, but the biggest primary focus is on the number, and it shouldn't be. It should be on the name, the branding. Same with the top left one as well. The names are too tiny. There's a huge logo on the right, a triangle. I don't even know what that is, right? Like, it doesn't matter. Like, just take that off, make your names much bigger. That'd be a perfect billboards, our bench ad. I'll show you some good examples. Again, I just pulled these off the internet, but the everything applies here that I'm going to say, right? You want to make sure the names are big. You look at all three of these things, you see the name right away, right? You see the face too. And the contrast in the colors helps the name jump off the page. And yeah, the one on the top left's a little washed out. It's a bad picture, but the images are also prime, like front and center as well. And I'm sure these people also have consistent branding too. That's one thing I didn't mention before, but you want to make sure you've got consistent branding. Use the same headshot for all your things, or similar headshots, right? Same fonts, same logo, same everything, right? You want to have a consistent brand guideline for all of your marketing. And that should go for like your social media posts, your feature sheets, like all of that. You want to have a package that you put together for all of these things. So you make sure everything's consistent, because if someone sees, let's say, a feature sheet when they walk into a house that's yours, they want to be able to connect that to the bench ads, the billboards they see in town. So all three of these, again, good examples. Are they perfect? No, but still, like, they do the job they're looking to do. They're pitching the name, they're pitching the brand, they're pitching the face. Here's a couple more good examples. I kept finding this Rod Peeler guy. I have no idea where he's from, but I love it. He's like, I never sleep is his slogan. And the guy looks like so disheveled. It's great. I just had to put it up there. His thing, like, he's got a good shtick, right? And it's like a little bit of a joke. Yeah, sometimes you might think these things are gimmicky, but the gimmicky things can work, right? Everyone's going to remember that picture. They'll be like, oh, he's that like disheveled guy that never sleeps. Rod Peeler, right? There you go. Brand recognition. I'm going to remember him. And wait, here's another one on the bottom right. Again, same thing, just another example of a good one. This one's a little bit more basic in terms of like graphic design, but her face is big and her name is big. Those are the important elements. It doesn't have to be complicated. It doesn't have to be fancy. You just want to make sure you got those things. So I've got some bad examples of postcards as well, and I'm going to show you some good examples afterwards too. Sometimes people focus a little bit too much on the information, right? Again, it's not necessarily about the information. People want the information, they'll look and they'll take the time. You want to make sure you're getting the branding in here. These are just their templates off of a marketing company's website. I wish I could have a chat with them about what they're putting together here. But yeah, look at the one on the left here. The guy's name, super tiny, bottom right. It's got a bit of a picture in the corner. It's not horrible, but he's not present, right? Thinking of buying or selling a home? Yeah, I am thinking of buying or selling a home. Well, maybe I'll call my neighbor who's a real estate agent. You want to make sure that this person's face, nice and big, comes across as like, oh, I've seen his stuff in the mail every month. Like, they start kind of associating real estate with you because they keep seeing your stuff, right? Make sure your face and your name are much bigger. You don't have to worry about having so much information on these postcards. Here's some more bad examples. Again, they're just way too busy. The one on the bottom left is the worst. There's not even a picture of the guy, right? John Sample. I know it's a sample, but still, that's the idea. You want to make sure you got your picture there. Here's some good examples, right? Sophie Smith on the left there. I have no idea where she's from either. Probably somewhere in the States. She's got a pretty nice little signature branding. Obviously, I'm sure she uses that like font and typography for all of her stuff, and probably the same image too, right? She knows, like, hey, it's about my name stuff. If people want my number, they'll dig down. My number doesn't have to be nice and big. My name has to be nice and big, and my face. Those are two important things. Sophie's really done a good job there. And there's information on here, right? But the information should almost be like secondary, right? This is just something about, important numbers in the village that you're in or whatever. So, but yeah, she did a good job. Her branding is front and center. Here's another agent here too on the bottom right. Again, picture front, like that's the first thing you're drawn to on both the front and the back of the card. She's got her stick there, thinking of selling a home, and her name probably could be a bit bigger, but still, it's there. It's in red. It's contrasting. People can see it. Deidre Lore. Here's a couple of other good examples too. And again, I just pulled these off the internet. Not sure where these agents are from. The one on the left, great branding. I think the typography might be a bit bad because you can't really read what her name says, but the idea is big picture, big name. Bottom right, same thing. Name could probably be a bit better. Doesn't stand out as much. Maybe get something that like jumps off the page a bit. But again, their picture takes up a large portion of the postcard. Great for branding presence.